Good evening and welcome to the Primetime News on your Joy News channel or Multi TV with me, Gifty Ando Apia. Let's take a look at our headlines for tonight. Spokesperson for the Rawlinses, Kofi Adams, is reinstated as Deputy Secretary General of the party after he was suspended for nearly a year for allegedly plotting to cause the defeat of the NDC at the December polls. Parliament begins debate on the 2013 budget with the minority casting doubt over government's ability to meet its deficit target of 9%. Meanwhile, Finance Minister has justified government expenditure for 2012, which was in excess of 1.8 billion cedis. Cardinal electors have failed in their first attempt to elect a pope to succeed Pope Benedict XVI. We have all these plus business, sports and showbiz coming up shortly. Please stay. In our very first story for tonight, spokesperson for the Rawlinses, Kofi Adams, has been reinstated as Deputy General Secretary of the ruling National Democratic Congress after offering an unqualified apology to the party and withdrawing a suit he filed against it last year. Kofi Adams was stripped of his executive position following allegations that he was planning the party's defeat at the December polls with a member of the NPP, Gabi Asare Otredako. This and other plans of the party for the year took center stage at a press briefing addressed by the party's General Secretary, Johnson Asiedu-Nketia, in Accra earlier today. The press briefing was to announce some key decisions reached by the party's National Executive Committee at its meeting on Monday. These included the election of new executives, biometric registration of members, fallout from investigations conducted into Kofi Adams' alleged plot to cause the party to lose the December elections, and the referral of another party member, Alhaji Bello, to the NEC for his numerous court cases against the party. Elections are expected to be held at the branch constituency, regional and national levels for new leaders of the party. National executives are expected to have been elected by December 7 or 8. Party General Secretary Johnson Asiedu-Nketia explained the biometric registration is to differentiate the party's members from its sympathizers. Presenting a detailed account of the work of the committee which investigated Kofi Adams' case, Mr. Asiedu-Nketia explained why it took the committee almost a year to reach a conclusion.
The disciplinary committee, also working within the constitutional time frame available to them, also referred the tape in question for professional examination. So, first, the committee was to determine the authenticity of the voices on the tape. The indication was that these were the voices of the people concerned. Then they will now weigh the evidence that are contained, the statements that are contained on the tape, against the provisions of our Constitution. The committee then referred the tape to the appropriate authorities, I believe it is the police forensic lab, for examination.
According to the reports, Kofi Adams had the option to vindicate himself in court or submit himself to internal procedures of the party.
Given the fact that Mr. Adams withdrew the suit against the NDC unconditionally, this fact should provide basis for mitigation of punishment. In the circumstances, the National Disciplinary Committee unanimously recommends that Mr. Adams render an unconditional apology to the NDC through its National Executive Committee.
According to Asiedu-Nketia, Kofi Adams' response raised some issues with the committee's report. 1. The withdrawal of the suit was done on 7th December rather than January 10, as asserted by the committee, for which reason Mr. Adams was barred from contesting the Buem by-elections after the death of Henry Ford Kamel on 25th December. He said it was rather the final grant of leave by the court, which was done on the 10th January this year. He claims it is thus unfair for the committee to assert he withdrew withdrew the case to benefit from the by-elections in the Buem constituency. Asiedun Ketia, however, noted NEC does not have evidence to that effect. Mr. Adam noted telephone conversations cited by the committee was initiated by him, Kofi Adams, and that the invitation to the committee's meeting was on short notice, hence his inability to show up. But NEC did not think his inability to show up at the meeting in question was enough to challenge the reports by the committee. In spite of all these, Mr. Adams apologized to the party and was accepted, hence his reinstatement. Let's move up north now. Calm has returned to Kulmaga and Dangberi Kukuo, all in Tamale, in the northern regional capital, following last night's violent clashes there. One person was shot dead with several others seriously injured in the violent clashes which erupted between two feuding communities over a parcel of land. The dispute between the two feuding communities has been lingering for about 2 decades now. The Northern Regional Police Command deployed a combined team of military and police personnel to restore peace in the area, leading to the arrest of 28 people. 8 locally manufactured guns, military uniforms, and other deadly material, including daggers, were retrieved from the combatant. And let's go to the Ashanti region now. 2 family members of the late Akwesi Yeboah, a 13-year-old boy who was murdered yesterday at Ebuakwa in the Ashanti region, have been arrested by the police. They are being held as suspect in the murder of the JHS2 students. The 2 are James Appel, 42, the younger brother of the deceased father, and Kofi Adams, 64, another relative of the deceased. Both reside in the same house with the immediate family and are currently in police custody. Family members maintain it was a premeditated murder and are appealing to the police to go the extra mile to arrest the perpetrators. Public relations of the officer earlier spoke to Joy News on that particular incident. We're back to the capital now. The minority in parliament is taking with a pinch of salt strategies outlined in the 2013 budget to achieve a 9% budget deficit. Government is said to have overspent in excess of 1.8 billion Ghana cedis last year, accounting for a 12% deficit. Contributions from members of the minority to the debate on government's financial policy in parliament today were full of skepticism.
Dr. Anthony Akoto-Osei described as unfortunate what he termed government's blatant disregard for laws governing public spending. The Member of Parliament for New Job and South, Dr. Mark Asibe Yeboah, said the huge public debt hovering around 33 billion Ghana cedis places the country in the highly indebted poor country bracket. But his comments were fiercely contested by Finance Minister Seth Terkper. The 2011 Auditor General report indicts some ministries and agencies for spending above their approved budget, and the Finance Ministry is worried about the development. It is, however, planning to sanction its employees on board of state institutions who violate laws on public spending. The debate on the 2012 budget is expected to continue till Friday.
You're still watching the Primetime News on Joy News on Multi TV. We'll take a quick breather here. We'll return with some more. You're welcome back. Many thanks for staying with us. Imagine living close to a capital city, yet you do not enjoy the development ongoing in the main town. For residents of Pepaweni, development will continue to elude them for some time. School children continue to walk long distances to school on foot, and pregnant women and the sick are unable to readily access health care. Etonamse recently visited the community, which is in the eastern region, and has come through with this report.
Pepaweni, Kwame Krom, and Awuye Krom are 3 communities along the Bri Road. Like many other remote communities, they cannot boast of access to some of the basic necessities of life, such as water. People living in these communities have to contend with bad roads, the absence of a health post, and the absence of electricity and potable water. Even though these communities in the Kwapem districts of the eastern region are just 2 miles away from the regional capital Koforidua, residents say they are yet to benefit from the development projects ongoing in the capital town.
It is how we high. Yenya Kania Kuraman Kolayin so soon. Yentuminto Gracie and Anokraya Kugas Yenya Gracie Anto. Afe bull of future, how was a woman wearing. Fina Hini could ever major bathroom on Atta and Uncle Lady as yard. Indeed, I want to read you will be more have a papa.
School children travel 2 miles on foot daily to be educated.
I'm sorry, I'm a pala. I'm a junior, I'm a school. Yes, school council worry. Oh, you so bododo. I just answer in Yakania.
If you are where a capel school. None to walk with I was a late, and we are babo. What by a view of how I know what is soon ever. And so you need school, it's school man. The amateur won't call on so far.
Those who are unable to make the journey in time are punished. The lack of electricity is greatly hampering the performance of children in schools as their assignments are often abandoned.
Abambeshe yensu ya mayen na wama kani anonso abeye na nkola na tumi di asuade.
This is the only source of drinking water for 3 communities. Those who do not want to use this water have to travel for another 3 miles to access this one, which happens to be their best, but under the circumstance. Life here is no different from the many other communities in the remotest parts of the country without access to the basic necessities of life. Joy News will continue to comb such communities and highlight their plights and demand improvements in their condition from the relevant authorities. Etonam say, Joy News.
Well, essentially what the woman was saying in the local language is that they need potable water, they need electricity, they need health facilities, as well as improvements in their road networks. Now let's move on with other stories. Now, participants at the second Ghana Economic Forum are worried that in spite of the gains made by Ghana and the international goodwill it enjoys from a stable democracy, there are still leadership challenges bedeviling the country that must be addressed. According to them, it is about time the country's leaders, political, business and religious, walked the talk and maintained high standards of discipline, equality and fair treatment to help drive national economic prosperity. Chief Executive of UT Bank, Prince Kofi Adams, believes if corruption is reduced by at least 30%, Ghana will be on track to economic prosperity. We'll bring you that story later, but let's move on with some other stories. The National Health Insurance Authority says it has started the process of settling its indebtedness to health institutions across the country. According to the Director of Administration of the NHIA, even though the process started some 2 weeks, some health facilities may have not received the monies since they are remitted through the schemes to pay the service providers. He made the disclosure on the sidelines of the one-table discussion on the provision healthcare to the poorest of poor in our society.
Section 104 of the National Health Insurance Act of 2003 describes an indigent as someone who does not have any visible source of income, a fixed place of residence, and also does not have a consistent source of support from another person. These persons are usually unable to access healthcare since they lack the financial muscle to foot their medical bills. But the NHIA says there is provision for such persons to access healthcare without even paying for their registration.
There's no difference between an indigent and a card holder. An indigent is a card holder. Once a member of the NHIS registers or somebody registers as a member, no matter whether they are fee-paying or exempt, they are given an NHIS card. That card does not indicate whether or not they are indigent. It doesn't indicate whether or not they are SNIT members or anything. It's just a membership card.
The Center for National Affairs today organized a roundtable discussion for stakeholders in health delivery to find ways of improving access to healthcare for indigents.
We would, as a center, suggest that a lot more transparency in terms of the publication, dealing with civil society organization and all other stakeholders within the health sector of our nation has to come from the NHIA so that we can, in our own small ways, make our contribution so we can have a successful national health insurance scheme.
Commenting on reports of discrimination by some NHIS card holders at the hospitals, a former Director General of the Ghana Health Service, Dr. Eliasori, said the primary concern of doctors should be the provision of adequate health care to patients.
Money will have to make sure that we have all the things we need to work with. But the primary concern is always the person who needs access to health care. And therefore, whether you have money or not, our system is supposed to make sure that you had it. And to make things beautiful, that is why the social health insurance was brought in.
Meanwhile, the Director of Administration and General Counsel at the National Health Insurance Authority has told Joy News reimbursement of service providers is ongoing.
2 weeks ago, we made some payments. Last week's payments were made. But I will explain the process of payment to you. When we say we have paid, it means we have remitted monies to the schemes to be able to pay the healthcare providers. So there's always a time lag between that remittance and the payment. But this week, we are going to remit again, I believe by Friday, to the schemes to pay the healthcare providers.
The NHI has, however, signed a memorandum of understanding with the Department of Social Welfare to enroll more indigents onto the health insurance scheme.
Some information just coming in from the presidency indicates that the president has appointed the following as members of the Constitution Review Implementation Committee. Mrs. Marietta Brew Apia Opong, Minister of Justice and Attorney General, who is ex-officio member, and Mr. Akenteng Apia Minka, lawyer and industrialist, and formerly a commissioner of the Constitution Review Commission. They replaced the following on the committee: Honorable Dr. Benjamin Bewanyong Kumwo, Minister in charge of Government Business in Parliament, and Mr. Bedizedeng, Northern Regional Minister acting. The appointments take immediate effect, and that was signed by Dr. Raymond Atugba, Executive Secretary to the Presidency. We'll take a quick break here. When we return, we'll tell you all that's been happening at the Presidency today.
News is topical. It is the latest and most compelling of events. On Top Story, we bring you the top story, the day's leading news item in 15 minutes. It's sharp, focused, and is live
every weekday at 5:30 p.m. on Joy News on Multi TV, on radio and online.
You're welcome back. Many thanks for your time again. Increase your investment in Ghana. That is President Mahama's admonition to Australia, Sweden, Lebanon, and Trinidad and Tobago. According to him, an increase in investments by these countries will further strengthen the bilateral relations between them and Ghana. The president made the call when the head of missions for these countries presented their letters of credence to him at the Flagstaff House today. Asked to present her letter to the president was the Australian High Commissioner to Ghana, Joanna Marie Adamson. President John Mahama said although Australia has good relations with the country, their relations in the area of trade is rather low.
There is quite strong participation in the Ghanaian business environment by Australian companies, especially in the mining sector, where they have very strong expertise. And so a lot of the mining services and a lot of mining is undertaken by Australian companies. And so we're pleased at that. We're happy to see that investment coming in. We're also asking Australian business and investment to look at the oil and gas sector in Ghana.
The president congratulated Australia on its new position on the UN Security Council and thanked them for helping bring sanctity to Mali. Madame Adamson thanked Ghana for its support over the years and added that Australia intends to focus on the mining sector as well as other areas.
Too, in which we can work on the trade investment side, and I'm thinking in particular of education services, agriculture, and yes, oil and gas, and we're talking about infrastructure investment and also the transfer of technology and expertise. On the development side, our development program with Ghana is relatively modest, but I believe it ties in well with your priorities in the areas of some public sector reform, some work on agriculture and food security.
Next was the Lebanese ambassador to Ghana, Ali Hassan Halabi. President Mahama noted that many Lebanese have naturalized in Ghana, adding that he is optimistic his tenure here will boost the relations between the two countries, which dates back to the days of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. The Lebanese ambassador pledged to work towards achieving that goal. Meanwhile, the Lebanese President Michel Suleiman is expected in Ghana this weekend. The third person to present his letter of credence was the Swedish ambassador to Ghana, Svante Kilander.
Look very much forward now to start my tenure here. I will come as often as I can, obviously, and I will do to the utmost of my capacity or ability to promote the relations between the two countries, which, as you so rightly said, Your Excellency, we share the same, the common grounds for very good relations.
President Mahama urged him to explore opportunities in the telecommunications and renewable energy sectors.
We have passed a renewable energy bill which says that we would increase the share of renewable energy in our energy mix to up to 10%, by the next 10 years or so. And we know that Sweden has a lot of expertise when it comes to renewable energy in respect of wind energy, in respect of solar. Ghana has a lot of potential for production of solar power.
The last to present his letters of credence was the High Commissioner for Trinidad and Tobago. He called for the establishment of a National Energy Skills Center as pertains in his country to equip people with the skills needed to work in the petroleum sector.
We are very eager to engage the Republic of Ghana. I believe that the time is now for us to work together to take control of our future.
President Mahama asked him to make his country's presence felt in Ghana's private sector.
It was necessary for us to learn from the experience of countries that have had the best practice in terms of utilizing oil and gas. And I must say that Trinidad and Tobago has been one of the countries that has shared freely its experience with Ghana.
Away from the Flagstaff House, let's go back to our earlier story. Participants at the second Ghana Economic Forum are worried that in spite of the gains made by Ghana and the international goodwill it enjoys for its stable democracy, there are still leadership challenges bedeviling the country that must be addressed. According to them, it is about time the country's leaders, political, business and religious, walked the talk and maintain high standards of discipline, equality and fair treatment to help drive national economic prosperity. Chief Executive of UT Bank, Prince Kofi Adams, believes if corruption is reduced by at least 30%, Ghana will be on track to economic prosperity.
The second edition of the Ghana Economic Forum sought to create a platform to debate and decide on the type of leadership needed to drive national economic prosperity.
Today, Ghanaians are more eager than ever to define a leadership future that will deliver economic development to our people. Good leadership is a central factor in the success or failure of nations, organizations, public sector institutions, and the local community. Hence, the need to give it the needed attention as a nation.
Various speakers identified major challenges with the current style of managing the economy and called for a reorientation.
Leadership, I will use one word, is all about values. Values meaning good values. Values meaning respect for human rights, respect for everybody, that we all have a right to be here, even though we have different roles to play.
Leadership has a role to play in driving economic prosperity in a nation. Ghana currently has a potential for prosperity that, on the one hand, appears imminent, but on the other hand, that may also elude us if we do not have the right leadership.
our leadership now lacks the confidence to even tell us the real situation, and we're all walking on eggshells around each other. Therefore, we have to be honest, and some of my colleagues have talked about integrity. I think it's important. It's important that we have that integrity and boldness. And sometimes our leaders are not bold enough because we hold them ransom, because if they tell us the truth, they don't know what's going to happen. But that's what they need.
Minister of Finance Seth Tekpe underscored the important role leadership plays in the country's development.
We've been talking about deficits and budget overruns. They come from leadership respecting budget norms, living within, budgets and others. Obviously, we have the big ticket items, like the management of the single spine and others which have come into play. But you can have the best leaders if you don't have the means of forecasting, for example, so you are able to get your revenues and estimates right. You may come up with deficits on the revenue side and probably overruns on the expenditure side, and it poses a big problem.
Minister of State at the presidency in charge of private sector development, Rashid Pelpo, called for greater collaboration between the private sector and government to help undertake major developmental projects, especially in the oil and gas, communication and road sectors.
Light fishing is still ongoing at the shores of Glife, a fishing community in the Greater Accra region. Although there are regulations prohibiting the practice, fishermen in the area say the practice is putting them out of business. The fishermen made the call when the Minister of State in charge of social and allied institutions visited some communities in the Ablekuma South and West constituencies.
The fishermen poured out their frustration to the minister when she visited them at the beach. They say the continuous use of light for fishing is gradually pushing them out of business. They further appealed to government to give them more supplies of premixed fuel. In the area, the minister met with women groups who spoke about challenges they face in the area, such as sun waning at the beach, poor drainage, flooding, and the lack of funds to run their businesses. The aged women were encouraged by the minister to renew their national health insurance card to enable them access to health care. She presented them with bags of rice and headpans. The sector minister also visited fishmongers at Glife and Choko, who pointed to sources of funding as a major challenge affecting their business. The minister assured them she would work with the Microfinance and Small Loans Center to provide grants to help improve their business.
I've started to identify the problems and where to direct them. I think in the shortest time, everything will be fine for them. The fishermen too, they complain about the premixed fuel. That one, I know there is a little problem there. They are supposed to release about 150 trucks, but now they are able to release 80. And they are working on it to make sure they release the 150 for them so that they will be free at that side too.
She also called on corporate organizations to come to the aid of these women as government also does its best to support them.
Coming up next is the business report. In business tonight, Finance Minister Seth Tekpe has justified government expenditure for the year 2012, which exceeded 12% of GDP. According to him, there was nothing government could have done to prevent overspending due to the numerous industrial actions embarked on by workers. He made the comments at a roundtable discussion on the 2013 budget in Accra.
The finance minister, who presented the budget statement to Parliament last Tuesday, said measures have been put in place to curb overspending this year. He, however, explained that the excess spending in 2012 was due to some difficult situations pertaining at the time.
There are benefits to the single spine, but the fact is that it has also become a huge fiscal burden. And as a policy, it must come with public sector reforms. Yes, it's true that a certain figure was disclosed, as Honorable Akoto indicated. But then part of the arrears were to be paid this year. But we were all in this country. Doctors were going on strike, teachers were going on strike, students were not going to take their exams. And sorry to say, the mocks were failing. We all went through that debate. So government has insisted and looked at the fiscal position and not paid the arrears in the interest of peace.
A senior economist at the Institute of Economic Affairs, Dr. John Kwache, challenged government to review its deficit reduction target, describing the 9% target as unambitious.
I note that the burden of fiscal adjustments falls more on revenues than on expenditure. Revenue is projected to increase from 22.3% of GDP to 25.4%, an increase of 3.1 percentage points. On the other hand, expenditure is just squeezed by 0.8 percentage points. I'm always happy to see revenues go up, since as a middle-income country, we should be taxing more.
Minister of State at the presidency, Fifi Kwete, blamed the politicization of the economy for the budget deficit.
The deficit is the reality that your income is not enough to cover your expenditure. Where does politics comes in? Politics comes in because people threaten far more because they feel you need to cave into my demand, otherwise you will lose election. Every politician would like to survive an election. So if I feel you are threatening me, I will cave in and give you what you want. I'm calling for a grand, discussion of the whole country. Let's all discuss this and say, it's our country's future that is really being destroyed and we need to find solutions to it.
Meanwhile, an economist at the Institute for Statistical, Social and Economic Research is optimistic government can meet its macroeconomic targets for 2013 since the 2012 targets were met.
We're still in business, and a senior macroeconomist at the Institute of Economic Affairs is calling for a total overhaul of the single spine salary structure. This, he believes, will ensure the longevity of the salary structure. He made the call at a presentation on the 2013 budget. Matilda Nyakwa Dennis was present.
Under his presentation on wages and salaries in the 2013 budget, Dr. Kwache said there was a need for a national debate about the long-term viability of the single spine salary structure and capital expenditure, which is always sacrificed. He questioned the basis of the single spine salary structure without a means to measure productivity, work inputs, job descriptions and working man hours. According to him, holding the same qualification and possessing equal number of years does not equate equal inputs.
We always talk about single spine. Everybody wants higher pay. Everybody wants higher pay. That's all that we talk about. But how about the work that people do? We don't question that. Are people more productive? If we are paying higher salaries to people who are doing the same work, we are, as an economy, we are not planning well. Even the SSS, the single spine, as a country, we may have to go back and revisit it and interrogate it.
Another pertinent issue he raised was the need for serious interrogation of Ghana's budgets, revenue and expenditures structure. He said there was need to reform these structures in order to contain the budget deficit and to reorient the budget to support economic growth and development while avoiding its often destabilizing effects. He said also worrying is the nation's poor budget monitoring system and how expenditures approved by Parliament are often grossly exceeded. He recommended a parliamentary budget office which will comprise representatives of all political parties to monitor budget implementation.
One thing that we are not good at as a nation is budget monitoring.
In fact, sometimes I wonder how expenditures that were approved by Parliament in a supplementary budget can be so grossly exceeded. This means that the Parliament is also a part of the problem. Yeah, they can't enforce the budget.
Casting a critical eye to the theme for the 2013 budget, which is sustaining confidence in the future of the Ghanaian economy, IEA's Dr. Kwache said it was an honest admission to some setbacks, though more apt themes could have been sustaining the Better Ghana agenda or building a brighter future for Ghanaians.
The influx of cheap and sometimes inferior imitations of printed fabrics from especially Asia into the country is threatening sustainability of local textile manufacturers. Since efforts aimed at ridding the market of these inferior prints have not yielded much result, some textile manufacturers have come together to devise ways of finding a solution to the situation. Marian Toure has more.
Ghana's once vibrant textile industry can be said to be gradually joining the league collapsed textile and garment manufacturers in the sub-region. From over 20 textile firms, which employed more than 25,000 people in the last 2 decades, the country now has only 4 textile factories, which employ less than 3,000 Ghanaians. The country's once thriving textile market is now flooded by substandard textiles from Asia. The Spinet Textile and Garment Cluster, an association made up of small businesses in the manufacturing of textiles and garments for both the domestic and export markets, met the media to discuss an advocacy plan to free the market of these substandard textiles. President of the association, Edwina Aban, explains further.
Most of us, our businesses have gone down by about 60%. Now, what it means is that your business will eventually collapse. But then we are saying that it is no fault of ours. It's the policies that are bringing us to that point. First of all, we have our products are competing with cheap ones and pirated ones from mainly Asia. Now, when these fabrics come in, they are very cheap in terms of cost of production because they use child labor, we don't. We pay taxes, they are smuggled in.
In spite of some action taken such as the seizure and destruction of confiscated fabrics, the industry still remains uncompetitive, evidence of failed interventions in that sector. Edwina Aban thinks government needs to do more in this regard.
If you give us a level playing field, we will be able to compete. If we make sure we have our borders well protected, these smuggled goods cannot come in. And if they cannot come in, then they will have to go through the right channels, go through customs, pay the right duties, and then they can compete with us. Worst of all, when we have come up with our creative ideas, our talents, they are picked and they are printed outside the country.
To what extent, though, could acts of indiscipline that tend to deprive the state of revenue for job creation and development be tolerated? And is complicity on the part of officials and those in charge of enforcement further leading to a decline of the sector?
What we need in Ghana is not just a change in legislation. What we need is a change in our mindset as Ghanaians. We should consume what we produce. Let's be patriotic and use made in Ghana goods like our ATLs and GTPs. Marian Toure, Joy News, Accra Central.
That report was filed by Marian Toure, as she said there. Coming up next is Smart Investment Tips. really, we have some information concerning the World Cup, you know, information on GH.
Yeah, the squad for the Black Stars has been released, and a couple
who is in and who is out?
So, I mean, the biggest, yes, Sule Muntari has been called back to the Black Stars.
Really?
And of course, on the local scene, Mahatma Otu of Accra Hartsville has been handed his debut call-up to the Black Stars. So
that's
some
a piece of good news for him.
Obviously, and we are going to see what the Black Stars will do when they play against Sudan at the Baba Sports Stadium on March 24. Very important.
Well, we wish they do well. And now that their youths are not in, we wish they have a plan to, you know, hoot at them maybe.
Obviously, we'll be expecting that, sure. And so we're coming with you and bringing all the stories after this. Ghana legend Abedi Pele has twisted the knife even further into the Ghana Football Association for the standoff between them and his two sons. The three-time legend insists the Ghana Football Association is to be blamed for the decision by his sons to withdraw from the Black Stars. He spoke exclusively to Joy Sports.
We've been talking maybe 30 minutes ago. Yes, on the ground they called to find out what are the results and are we playing better football? Have we scored? Those questions are always on the line. So I always speak to them every minute. Well, I think this is beyond my own limit or my own limit. I think there's discussions going on, and I hope that it goes on well. No, I'm not bothered at all because I've also gone through all those hustles in the past, so I take it to be one of those things. I always believe that they are grown-up children, 23, 21. Well, they live in Europe for the past maybe 23 years. So for me, this is an opportunity for them also to take things on their own hands and then they make their decisions. But occasionally, like you said, occasionally father and mother will always chip in a word or two. But for the moment, I think the children are doing the right thing. Yeah, it's their decision and we just have to support them. I mean, everybody there is a friend. Kwesi Appiah, I've played with him. But if you have a friend who have disappointed you, what do you do? I mean, there's nothing you can do. So we all stay behind our kids.
All right, so we know very well that the Ayu brothers are not in, but who and who are in?
Internationally renowned reggae musician Rocky Dawuni has encouraged Ghanaian musicians to improve their personal brands to become globally attractive. This, he said, is the trick that has put his works and music on the international map.
Rocky Dawuni burst onto the music scene some 18 years ago with his debut recording, The Movement. Rocky's works have since gained extensive airplay on major radio stations across the world. He attributes his rise to international stardom to hard work and his quest to constantly improve himself.
Ghanaian musicians haven't really been able to push themselves onto the international stage and be part of the international travel circuit where you are able to really earn a living and also, you know, develop a career that is going to be recognized beyond the borders of Ghana. You know, and I feel that people should have their sights set that far. You know, luckily, an artist like myself have been able to really, through hard work, be able to push myself, you know, that far. But I always want to look back and also let everybody know that this is something that we all should set our sights onto so that we can really be able to not only push ourselves there, but also really have people be attracted to Ghanaian music as a global force, because it is a global force. But until we are out there on the globe making that impact, it's only a global force within our minds.
According to him, even though Ghana music is making inroads in the international stage, there's still room for growth. He thinks stakeholders need to invest more in the local music industry.
The various stakeholders have to understand that music is a viable...
Hackers have posted private details of finances of some celebrities. The budget gives much hope except the hopeless who don't see any hope in it. The truth of the matter is that President Mahama would deliver on his policies beyond expectations. Let me just scroll down a little since there are so many of them. Let's take this quick one from Abdullah Dinviela Asnau, and he says that I can confidently say that there's petrol at the mobile filling station in Yendi. However, the only one out of the 6 filling stations in town. It is our hope that the other stations will get theirs to ameliorate the precarious petrol shortage in Yendi. That's Quite a number of big words he's trying to use over there. So that's how we wrap up. But before we go, let's take a look at our headlines. Spokesperson for the Rawlinses, Kofi Adams, is reinstated as Deputy Secretary General of the party after he was suspended for nearly a year for allegedly plotting to cause the defeat of the NDC at the December polls. Parliament begins debate on the 2013 budget, with the minority casting doubt over government's ability to meet its deficit target of 9%. Meanwhile, Finance Minister has justified government expenditure for 2012, which was in excess of 1.8 billion cedis.